Welcome to a very special episode of Big Red Farmhouse, Wanakee's very own podcast. My name is Nicole Richards, and I'm one of the regular hosts of the podcast. Today, I'm speaking with James Tresner, Wanakee's Executive Director, on a special video recording. And we're going to be talking a bit about James's first 5 years on the job. Welcome, James.
Thank you, Nicole. Yes, it's great to be here. Thanks for inviting me back. And I'm excited to talk about our last 5 years and our next 5 years.
It's hard to believe so much time has gone by, but you did join Wanakee in the hot seat in February 2016, and today we're just going to find out a little bit about some of your roses, thorns, and buds for the first 5 years. So I hope you're ready to share a bit of your experience with the Wanakee community today.
Yes, yeah, perfect. And if you've never had the opportunity to be at a Wanakee campfire, rose, thorn, and bud is one of the ways that we like to close our days at camp together, right? So the roses, campers get to share something that they enjoyed about that day. The thorn is something that maybe was difficult for them, and then the bud is something they're hopeful about. And I remember doing it as a camper and as a summer staffer, and it's fun that we've chosen to do that today too.
Yeah. So let's get right into it, James. What are some of the roses that you've had for these first 5 years?
There have been a lot, yes. The obvious and biggest one is the growth in our missional reach, and I think that's most clearly shown through our increased camper numbers. And summer camp is the heart of Wanakee, and the chance to serve more and more campers each year and provide a joyful and affirming space for them to be themselves and experience radical acceptance where they are welcomed as they are and for who they are. It just means so much, and we grew about, I think, from 2016 to 2015 to 2019, we were up 37%. Things are a little bit off the rails now with COVID throwing so many curveballs our way, but it has been really inspiring to be a part of that, and just to know that it's not growth because of growth. It's growth because every additional camper we welcome is one more person whose life we're changing and someone who we're influencing in a positive way. And even if they only come to camp one time, creating a memory that I really believe and know that they'll carry with them for life and a little soft spot in the corner of their heart. And hopefully they do come back year after year. But I think any camper who experiences camp walks away with positive memories that will always be carried with them.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I did a similar conversation 6 months in to this job, and so I told the strange story of just how meaningful I grew up here. This is year 22 or 23 involved at camp, in addition to being year 6 now in the 6th year as the director. And there are just funny moments where I don't expect to get nostalgic or to have those moments of deja vu or just these memories that I kind of forgot I had that come flying back. And the story I told in 2016 was about the smell of the lower shower house, which isn't like a totally unpleasant one. It's just a very specific one. And the rec hall also has a smell, and so does the farmhouse. I was just talking about it yesterday at our mini workday. And I had the same experience with Dan Atori and Matt Manser, who were on our board and both of whom I worked with on summer staff, and we were doing a walkabout to check on some of the things that we needed to tweak for this upcoming summer to make sure we're prepared for operating as safely as we can during as we figure out COVID protocols. And Matt walked into the shower house and had that same exact reaction of, wow, this just smells exactly the same. And it's so rewarding personally to be with friends like Dan and Matt, and to be speaking with you today, someone I've known for many years, and also just to be at camp, a place that I love. There's a reason why so many alumni stop by to go for a walk or watch a sunset, or use us as a place to meet up with a friend or have a picnic, hike the trails, and that's because the physical space is really meaningful. And then in the summer to get to watch campers and staff do their thing, and I'm living it with them and also living vicariously through them when I'm in the office paying bills, but I still get to watch them sing the Crossing the Street song or something, which I used to love doing as a counselor, just making that into a whole thing with my site. And it's really so joyful. Not a lot of jobs. Those 7 weeks in the summer are just so full of memories. it's powerful. And the last thing I think I would cite in the rose category would be just being a part of, and I guess really immersed in, right, my day-to-day life, my professional life, and so much of my personal life still is enveloped in the river of love and support for camp, and um, just the ways that our community has stepped up and secured Wanakee's future in so many ways for the next generation. And that's in these work days that we've always had with lots of volunteers showing up, and summer engagement, our boards and committees, and all the people who offer time freely and frequently to make sure that we are making smart decisions and moving forward and staying true to our mission and the goals of the Wanakee programs and ministry. It's also in the number of donors we have, and even in my first year, we had just over 100 people who gave gifts, and now we have over 200 giving in one day during New Hampshire Gives. And in the 3 years before, and from 2013 to 2015, we were raising on average $13,000 or $14,000 a year. In 2020, we raised more than $200,000 from almost 400 unique people. I mean, that's, without getting ahead of myself, a thorn could be the financials of running any nonprofit, but especially a nonprofit that is as small as we are, and kind of, with the thin staff that we have, and also in the landscape of being a United Methodist entity, as the church around the world is undergoing transformation, and it's hard to be a church. It's hard to be a church-related organization financially, but our community has just shown time and time again their commitment and level of support, and it just keeps pushing me forward. It keeps pushing everybody forward, and we can look to our next 60 years with so much hope and optimism, and it's just so incredible and inspiring to be just immersed in that. Thank you. I'm just so grateful for that.
Yeah, I think if I were to pick one rose myself, I would say seeing the change in generosity, not the change, but the commitment from our community and expansion of that in giving of their time, talents, and treasure to Wanakee. And I think without the support of the Wanakee community, there's just no way that we could have tackled some of the major issues that we've tackled today, including bringing more campers on site, where we continue to be a very excellent value camp in the state of New Hampshire, and just in general, because we have such commitment from our community to provide camperships for families that can't afford to send their child to camp through their own means, and also still keeping camp affordable otherwise, and all the millions of facilities improvements that we've made over these past couple of years. The generosity of the community, I think, is the thing that I would highlight the most.
Yes, yeah. I mean, everyone is so activated, right? It just feels like people who
Yeah,
love camp are just so engaged and in the zone, and that's why it's working, right? That's why we're
right.
growing, and that's why we're bouncing back from COVID with such confidence and speed, and getting back to overnight camp this summer. And I thank you for bringing up support for campers and families, right? We've always had the belief that finances should never be an obstacle for anyone having a Wanakee experience. So we are the best deal in New Hampshire, in the region, in terms of the cost for coming to camp for a week, and that's only possible because of the support of the United Methodist Church and the congregations of our conference, and because the individuals and families who support us are so committed to that with us. And it plays out every summer, where we meet every bit of need that we see for families to make sure that their kids are here, and that's so important. Yeah.
It is. I wonder, James, if you'd share with us what some of the challenges have been. So in our rosebud thorn or rose thorn bud, the thorns are the things that have been a part of the journey and that have been maybe caused a little bit of pain or struggle. What are some of the things that have been challenges over these first 5 years?
Yeah. um, it's a hard job. I think that's a very general and vague statement, but it is a position, and I think camp directing in a lot of places, but especially at Wanakee, as an executive director, I will be meeting with the board and working on visioning and mission, and then I am also the plow guy. And there's water coming out of the ground, and that's because a valve is not tightened all the way, and I have to try and remember where that valve might be. So, you know, it's just, there's such a broad scope, and it is really, really, really hard to stay on top of everything as the sole full-time employee. And thank goodness that we were able to hire a year-round assistant director, Hannah, back, she's heading into her 4th year now, in early 2018, and that has made a world of difference. But as we've scaled up and continued to serve more campers, we've needed every bit of her time in addition to the full-time capacity that I bring to it. So, you know, I have to know about state and federal labor laws and paint and stain types and how and where to apply them, and how to lead a group of 100 and singing around and running a tractor, which I love doing. We were able to upgrade our tractor last year, and I have been removing rocks from the field recently. It's a fun, you know, sort of in the evening. The picture behind you, Nicole, is a sunset that I grabbed that one night when I was out pulling out a rock that people trip on from the field with the tractor. And it's a fun hobby, but also not a skill I'd ever thought I'd have, is learning how to do that. You know, PCI credit card security standards implementation. I have to do that every year. The location of the 11 septic tank lids around camp, and sort of the basics of those systems, and then applying for payroll protection plan loan applications. I might be doing all of those things in a given day, and it's interesting. And you know, I've learned a lot, and I expanded my skill set in ways that I never would have imagined when I started my career as in higher ed like 10 years ago now, I guess. But it's still a challenge, because there are things that I have to do as the signer on our bank accounts and the person paying the bills and living on site, making sure that our 200 acres are monitored. And after a windstorm, I walk the property and see how many trees have fallen on our ropes course and our different structures, our 25 buildings. And then there's the things that move our mission forward the most, and that's summer camp and bringing in new campers and working on our you know, realizing our mission through camping and our programs, and then also working on the viability and long-term stability of the organization. And that's a lot of, you know, financial work. And then there's all these things in the middle that also take up time, that it really is just a tough balancing act to figure out where my time should go when I have a limited 40, 60, 80, 100, whatever many hours I'm working in a week. I'm still going to run out of time eventually. So prioritizing that and trying to meet all of the needs of different stakeholders and people who are engaged at camp is hard. And that actually bleeds in, I think, to the other thorn that, or thing that's been a real struggle. And I think it's a bit of a bud and a rose too, but Wanakee is an intensely personal place. And it was that for me. I grew up here as a camper and a summer staffer and a volunteer and a committee member. I've been involved for a long time. I have a lot of really, really meaningful friendships and relationships that are formed only because of camp. And if you've listened to the Big Red Farmhouse podcast, which this is now on, and but other episodes, you'll hear time and time again people meeting their partners, their best friends, mentors at camp. And that is certainly true for me. But now I also have this professional accountability and responsibility as the full-time staff member accountable for our safety and our finances, right? Like those are the core elements of what do I have to do? I have to make sure camp is safe. I have to make sure camp is paying the bills and moving forward and protecting, you know, the institution. And people are really passionate about camp on a personal level. I think that they're more passionate about a place like Wanakee than their college or their, you know, in so many organizations. Wanakee, when you come here, you live here, you eat here, you make your best friends here. So it gets into your soul in wonderful ways, and that's part of why it's so valuable, and that's part of why I love the work. But it also means that the people's relationship to the place is really complicated because it's so fundamental to who they are. And that leads to disagreements. I don't want to sugarcoat that at times it can be hard because of what I just said, you know, my limited time that I have and how I have to prioritize and be really mindful of the financial implications of if I'm not spending 2 hours recruiting campers because I'm spending those 2 hours doing something else. Is that really, I have to do things that aren't building relationships with families. That's necessary. But there are moments where I have to actively choose, is this going to actually move Wanakee forward as much as this other thing? And if I'm saying no to something or changing something because I need to focus on something else, that doesn't always sit well with somebody who maybe is really interested in a certain, you know, in engaging with camp in a way that is hard for me to get onto the list. I also know in my heart that everybody who loves Wanakee, I think if I sat down with them one to one and we just talked about what are our vision and goals and why do we care about this place, we 90%, 95% of would be the same, right? Like we all want campers here. We want this place to thrive. We want our kids and our grandkids and our nieces and nephews. We want future generations to come here, have their own experiences, and we want it to continue to be small group focused and a place that fosters meaningful friendships and rustic. Right? These are I think that we all agree on that, and that's what I come back to in those moments. And um, I would say, so again, another, I'm going to sort of cheat and look back at a rose is, but also use it as an example. Phil Polhemus, a retired pastor who lives up the street from camp, literally, and also has been the council chair, and he's going to be on an upcoming episode of this podcast. He was the interim site director in 2005. He helped caretake the facility and keep the lights on between in the 3 or 4 months before when we didn't have a full-time executive director. And he's also someone who was a mentor to me when I was on summer staff and someone I've known for a long time. But I've had the opportunity to just get so much closer to him because he has so much to teach and I have so much to learn. And to count him as a closer friend and role model has been a real joy. And also, we work really closely together. In particular, in 2016, he was back on. He agreed to come back as our facilities coordinator and help me figure out where those 11 lids to our different septic tanks are, among other things. And that also, we're each people with our own vision and specific ideas that we bring to the table, and sometimes we would have conflict, and that's I think natural in any environment, but particularly a work environment for sure, but especially a personal environment like camp. When you combine those things, that can get pretty intense. But one of the things that I love about Phil is that even in spite of any moment where we had a disagreement, we also always knew that we had the same goal and that we could work through it and that it was rooted in love for each other and in passion for this place and this ministry and the way that we can change lives. So you have your disagreement, you work through it, and then you move forward. And so it has been hard because of the way that this is a personal place for me with professional expectations and realities. But also that has brought real depth of joy because I've gotten to work alongside you and Phil and people on the board and our committees who I was campers with and on staff with, and that has meant so much. So it definitely sort of cuts both ways, but it's been a challenge.
Yeah, I think when we're working in sort of the nonprofit space and we have a lot of volunteer driven things, so all of our committee work, aside from the inputs that you and Hannah give, it's all volunteer based, and there are hundreds, if not thousands, of hours of work that happen. Not even on the actual facilities upkeep. When we have work days with tons of people, there is so much input happening there. But it is based on volunteers and people giving their time and people who care about camp for all their different reasons. And the personal relationships are one of the special parts. But as you said, I also experienced some challenges in trying to work with folks in the professional way as a board member and in the personal way as we've known each other for 25 years and we're trying to work through this together. It's the challenges abound, and I think it's something worth mentioning, that it's tricky because there are a lot of personal opinions and people caring about the place, and just coming back to the mission and why we're here. That's the thing that brings us all together.
Definitely, yeah. And then I think Wanakee is a place where the connections are so, I don't know, they're just so caring, right? And I think, but sometimes we get so wrapped up in whatever problem we're solving that we forget that ultimately, like the reason that I care about this person is that we sat around a campfire, in 2007, and we laughed and we sang, and that, but it's easy to get away from that, and I don't know, it's hard.
Yeah. Well, those are some of the thorns, James. Now let's talk a bit about the buds. So the buds, as James mentioned, are either things that we're hopeful for, but they could be things that we're starting to see a glimmer of already that we're hoping will blossom into roses in the future. What are some of the buds that you see coming in the next 5 years or the next year, whatever that time frame might be?
Yes, yeah. I'm going to talk a little short term and a little long term, I think. So the first, and doesn't have necessarily a timeline, but I'm excited about, though it is a lot of work, all the efforts that are happening to bring camp back and reopen and rebound from pandemic life from the last 15 months. It is really exciting how positive the news is of late when in the States in particular, and that we can start looking towards returns to things that feel more familiar from before March 2020. And so hopefully that also will include a growth in our summer camp programming again, getting back to running day camp, welcoming retreats again as we're able to, and just making it so that more people can have their experience in our Christian community during the summer and other times of the year. We've lost a lot in the last 15 months, and camp is one of those things that you know I was feeling it, and we just had our first sort of public facing event on site yesterday with a little quote mini work day, and there were 15 or 20 folks here and working hard, mowing lawns and replacing light fixtures and planning for the next projects, renovations to get ready for the summer. And it was just so wonderful to be together again, not on Zoom, and see those folks. So I'm excited about that. It is definitely a bud. It is probably it's just a lot of work, right? We have a long ways to go because of all the things that happened in the last 15 months and how this summer, for example, opening with less than 50% capacity compared to when we opened in 2019. That's a sobering reality, but at least we're opening, and we're going to have campers here, and it's going to be amazing. I cannot wait. I'm going to be really nervous on that first Sunday, but man, it's going to be so fun. The first Alleluia, on that first time we get to sing a song up and down the hill from side to side as our traditional closing, I think it's just going to be spine tingling, just so good to be back to that.
Yeah, it's
Very,
going to
very,
be memorable for the rest of your lives. The staff members that know what happened last summer, those who worked on staff that missed the in-person Alleluia, and just the feeling of getting that back, I think is going to be very rejuvenating, I think, for the community.
Yes, for sure. Yeah, I wish there were. Unfortunately, Alleluia are not a thing that you can record very easily because it's so faint up in the distance. So I would try and put it out there. Maybe we'll live stream the staff singing from the street, and then you can just fill in the blanks with the campers up at their sites.
Right.
But yeah, it's but all the and little things in between there too. Even just walking by 9 Square and seeing a site out there in the field, just laughing and having fun. We haven't had that in 2 years. It's going to be amazing.
Yeah.
To get back to something very practical and near term is New Hampshire Gives has been we have Wanakee, the Wanakee community earned the Power of Many Award for the most dollars raised in a 24-hour period during this one-day event, a generosity event for the state of New Hampshire, both in 2019 and 2020, which was remarkable, very unexpected. Last year, there were almost 500 organizations participating, and this year we're at that same number, if not going to jump over 500 maybe. So I don't know what the community will do this year, but what I can specifically, I guess, announce here is that we do have a supporter of camp raised their hand and reached out and said, I'd like to provide some matching prizes for Wanakee again to try and see what we can do on that New Hampshire Gives Day. And that's 5 p.m. on June 8th until 5 p.m. on June 9th. So those matches are, the first one is a $30,000 dollar for dollar, so one for one match. So if you give $100, that would be matched by this donor up to $30,000. There's also going to be some other matching prizes. $300,000 was pledged by the New Hampshire Charitable Foundation, I think is the name. So that's going to be spread out throughout the 24-hour period. There's some giving minutes this year, I think. So there's potential, though, that your gifts could be tripled, which is really exciting. The other one is that if we reach 200 unique donors, then we would unlock a $20,000 gift as well from the same donor. So that's a total of $50,000 in matching incentives to support camp on that day. And consider this: if you give $20, if that's, every gift makes a big difference. And we're so excited. One of the things that I mentioned earlier is the number of people supporting camp, and it doesn't mean that all those people are giving $500 or $1,000, because a lot of them aren't, and that's that. But they're still putting their flag in the sand and saying that I care about camp and I'm investing in camp. So if you give $20 during New Hampshire Gives, that could be first doubled up to $40, and then another $100 unlocked when we get the $200 to 200 donors. So that could be a $140 gift. So I hope you might consider supporting us that day. And all of that is in service to our mission, which includes the camperships that we spoke about earlier, and ensuring that camp remains the most affordable option in the state, and that we meet all demonstrated need from families if they need additional help to get here. It also includes the added expenses of renovating different spaces in camp, building a new outdoor hand washing sink outside our dining hall, things like that for us to reopen this year without passing all of those expenses onto families, which we're committed to not doing. And lastly, it's major upgrades, right? And that's last year we bought a new truck and tractor. We renovated the farmhouse recently. A project that you will probably never notice, but we had to do was investing some tens of thousands of dollars into repairing some cracks in the foundation of the upper shower house, which I just was in there early last week. And now the area underneath is perfectly dry, which was the goal, which will preserve that building for decades to come. So we've done a lot of great projects, and we are very close to having enough funds in the bank to continue. We want to stay away from taking out loans as much as possible, but we have almost enough money to start really getting into the literal planning of building a new health center. And that would be a space for campers to have rest and recovery when they're not feeling well, and also for our nurse or our camp medical staff and their families to be comfortable. And with healthcare is right so front of mind right now, and that's one of the things that underscore why this is a need for camp. We've used our farmhouse for a long time, but it's a needed upgrade for the camper experience, for safety, for managing things like COVID, which hopefully we don't have to face as sharply as we did last year. We also have other dreams, including working on the inside of the farmhouse, maybe winterizing that. The dining hall, you may have seen plans for that floating around 5 or 10 years ago to build a new kitchen off of it and then expand seating, since we had to take out a bunch of tables when the fire code changed about a decade ago. We went from 144 seats to 86. So those are pretty front of mind. There's a lot of under the ground sort of infrastructure, water and roads that needs help. And then lastly, hopefully this will work with my background. If you came to Homecoming 2019, you may have seen this fun sign floating around. It's not really working, is it? But it's funny. There we go. A new retreat center, our rec hall. Right. We love it. It's historic. It's been around a long time. And also there's things that it's not doing. So to make our you and me experience and our volunteer experience a higher quality, we would love to do that at some point, but that's maybe a little further off in the distance.
Yeah, I think where I shared my rose was the generosity. I think I will have to just use it for my bud as well. That the generosity from the Wanakee community is something that I'm very hopeful about. And I shared with you last week, James, that for me, also thinking about seeing people who bring their children and then their grandchildren to camp, not just as campers, but also helping on work days and those things, so that the people that come to Wanakee are not just getting something from Wanakee, they're giving something back to Wanakee and giving back to the next generation after them and after them and after them. And that's something that I feel very excited about. And you touched on many of the facility items that we have been able to address recently, and also some of the really big needs that we have for camp to be able to move forward in the future. There's a lot of work that still needs to be done, and I'm just really excited to see how the Wanakee community comes and helps and supports and helps us meet those needs and make these dreams into reality in the future.
Absolutely. I love the way you said that. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was our rose thorns and buds. I'm curious if you have any other thoughts that you wanted to share that are sort of outside of that framework.
Yes. Well, I think now we may as well take a moment to just invite people first to some ways that they can help Wanakee today and tomorrow, right? And you had reminded me earlier that the best thing we could ever invite someone to do is to invite a young person to come to camp. And that includes campers, of course. If you invite a neighbor or your niece or someone from church to come to camp, you're inviting them to experience something that will stay with them forever and potentially change their life, right? And at the worst case scenario is they have a week at camp where they can tuck that in their heart and always remember a time where they were welcomed unconditionally for who they were and just got to have some simple fun in the woods, and maybe consider a life of faith and what that could offer them in terms of hope and support and inspiration. We're also still looking for summer staff, which is not normal for May as we get close to summer, but that young person includes young adults or young at heart. who maybe need a summer job, and more importantly, are looking to make a difference in the lives of hundreds of young people. I mean, that's what camp offers, in addition to some of the best friends you will ever have and some really phenomenal opportunities to develop skills and leadership. I think, was that, there's
Yeah, and
also
I
our
think
wish list on Amazon, sorry.
exactly. We've got a wish list on Amazon, and there's ample opportunities for individuals to give to camp by spending some time at camp. Obviously, with doing these kinds of things in a pandemic and starting to welcome staff and campers, there will be some changes to, yeah, just the way that people get access to the property. But there's lots of projects that still need to be done. Trails need to be cleared. Lots of work for every ability level. So if you've got time and want to come up and spend a bit of time at the space that you love so much, please get in touch with James at yeah, you can find our contact information on the website. And as James mentioned, the Amazon wish list. And New Hampshire Gives, check, mark it off in your calendar, June 8th and 9th, the special day of giving in the state of New Hampshire, where your dollars will be increased because of some generous matching donors. So if this is a place that you love, there's lots and lots and lots of ways for you to support us.
It's a fun day to follow along. I mean, with Wanakee and with just the whole sector in the state. I mean, the New Hampshire is an outlier nationally to the company that helps support the infrastructure of such giving. They thought the website was broken last year because people across the state, one of their leaders logged on and literally thought there was a tech problem because 500% increase in giving from 2019 to 2020 as a state. I mean, that is
Yes, phenomenal.
really remarkable, really, really, really cool. And it's so fun. It's great for Wanakee, and it's great to be a part of it. I mean, New Hampshire is full of very generous people. So
Yeah,
yeah.
fabulous. Well, James, I wonder if you would share any parting words of wisdom with our listeners today.
Yeah. Well, thank you again, Nicole. This has been a lot of fun. I really appreciate you spending some time here and inviting me on. I I think I would close with two things, and one is just I think back to our very first board retreat in my first year in fall of 2016, and we were fortunate to welcome Travis Allison, who's a camp consultant and grew up at a camp and also worked at camps that are not so dissimilar from Wanakee, but he's from up in Canada. But as someone who travels around the camp industry and really has a depth of knowledge of a lot of different types of camps, he looked at Wanakee and looked at us and just underscored how important it was that the small camps with all the heart keep going and keep thriving, right? Because there's a lot of camps out there that are big with hundreds of people and speedboats and this and that. But the character and the unique qualities of this small, our small program and our tight bonds that we form and the small group focus and then the rustic nature of our site. There's a lot of heart here, and we've talked a lot about how you're already showing that. But if you think about what Wanakee offers to individuals in the world. And it's such a unique little space and a unique little experience that isn't little. I shouldn't use that word. I think it's impactful and can be a real cornerstone for a rich and meaningful life in so many ways, in friendships, in faith, in experience, in experiencing nature in meaningful ways. Thank you. That's the other thing I wanted to say is it's been such an honor and a joy to be immersed in the community. That means so much to me personally, and now is my professional day to day where I really just sort of spend all my waking hours. The ways that the experiences and connections that can't become cornerstones of joy, and connection. I can't wait to see what the next 5 years hold, and it's truly been an honor and such a unexpected turn in my life to be able to breathe camp in this place that I love day in and day out. So I'm appreciative of the opportunity and more than that, appreciative of the community and all the individuals who have made the 5 years meaningful and positive and just charted us on such a inspiring and hopeful course for our next 60 years. Thank you for that.
Oh, thank you so much for sharing those beautiful sentiments with us, James. I think as you said, the work of the community is why you're able to do what you do. You need the support of everyone in the Wanakee family, and I want to thank you also for what you've done for camp in these first 5 years, and and bringing Wanakee's needs to the community so that the community can respond and help us move forward. I think that's been something that's been a real blessing to the ministry.
Yeah, thank you, Nicole. Appreciate it.
All right, and we hope you tune into the next episode of Big Red Farmhouse. Bye for now.